anybody else wants to.
I am.
Hi, everybody who is watching right now. We are actually going to reschedule this MudFlood discussion for Thursday. Is that the 20th? 4 days from now. Because we've had some people who had to unexpectedly drop out and we had some technical issues. So thanks for tuning in. But if you come back, same time, 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on Thursday in 4 days, then you can catch us with the same discussion. It'll be even better than it would have been tonight. That's what I am predicting. Do you guys want to say hi?
Hi. I just don't know what about this giant bottle of wine now.
I actually am hoping that you'll just video call me privately and I'll just watch you drink it in silence. I'll just sit here.
On. It might get awkward.
I'll vogue to it the whole time. Make you feel better.
I'll tell you what. I'll do that if we can play the Four Non Blondes song for an hour straight.
Perfect. No, you have to sing it right now.
Right now?
Yeah.
Oh my God, do I try?
People probably think that we don't even know that we're live right now, but we know.
Mm-hmm. I think we know. I'm pretty sure. I did pick my nose just for levity, but
I'm just seeing if anybody in the chat has any. I know Hiroshi, we're disappointed too, but if you come back in 4 days, then you'll be happy.
Hiroshi, do you have any questions for us?
A Q&A for Claude.
Do y'all want to see our awesome hats? Where's your hat, Johnny?
Hi, Lori.
Oh yeah, I did have a hat.
Hi, Brett. I'm sorry. It's going to be so much better on Thursday, though. Seriously, we got more people who are even more knowledgeable about MudFlood coming then.
See, I don't think Johnny saw how awesome mine is, though. Mine could turn into a military hat. Put the little thing in the middle.
There you go. He-Man,
You guys are so dorky.
Kind of a thing that we do. We had the same birthday.
You know.
Lori Taylor just wrote us a poem. Sad for us, but time to prepare. Can't wait. See you there. I don't know if you meant to do that, Lori, but it was totally poetic.
Is that a haiku?
I like it. Oh yeah, I should put on glasses so I can read.
You blind bastard.
I'm so blind.
People, I think, like us doing nothing because 7 people were watching when we started and 7 people are still watching.
They're waiting. They're waiting for Claude to say something offensive so they can shut down his channel.
Listen, I'm going to just let everybody know that it might be best that we didn't do this tonight because with the random question of the day might have gotten you kicked off of YouTube, Lindsay. I'm just
so true.
Because I was about ready to go off.
Well, I mean, it's okay to have differing opinions in the mainstream about that topic. We could do just that question and have a new one on Thursday.
I'm down. What do you got, Johnny?
Like, wait, I'll say the question first.
That would make
the pointless question of the episode was going to be. It was going to be, now that we've seen the first transgendered woman smash the competition in a woman's handball, what is the next sport you think that we'll see a biological human male dominating a biological woman's league, and why?
See, I feel like
that was a PC way to ask that question as well.
I feel like I need to put on my talking nonsense mask for this.
There you go.
I'm so mad you destroyed that mask.
It's awesome.
A waste of a mask. That robberies will never be the same.
It's pretty sad.
It is.
Well, I mean, it looks cool.
Oh, geez. Well, see, I have to take this in a different direction because I don't think it's about just dudes playing women's sports pretending to be women or women playing men's sports pretending to be men. I think it's a lot bigger than that because you have. And I gave this some thought. Look at every section of society. Just take a cross-section of whichever part of society and look at it, and you have the same thing playing out, whether it's politics, work, jobs, obviously the sexes. They're getting rid of individuality in everything. There's no... It's taking equality to the nth degree to the point that it's completely wiping away individuality. But at the same time, so take the 1,000 different pronouns thing, for example. you have all of these people wanting to find that individuality and say, no, you have to refer to me as lamp or they or right.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, they're also saying there are no longer any real genders, so everybody's completely equal. Take it back a couple of years ago. What was the big thing everybody was saying? They were calling everyone that was a social justice warrior a special snowflake because they're all unique. But ultimately what they're doing is they're taking away the uniqueness from everyone in everything. And I think it's how do I say this without being a dick?
Chrisanne, you made it.
I hope so.
Okay, we're
see
still gonna reschedule to Thursday, I think, because
me?
I don't know. I don't know. What do you guys think we should do?
Oh,
Let's ask the audience. What do you guys think we should do? I'm sorry that I interrupted your rant, Claude.
No,
I
it's
want to know what people think. You guys in the chat, in YouTube, or in Facebook, tell me what you think we should do, and then go on, Claude.
let's find out what we're gonna do. I guess it's about that because I don't know which direction to take it, because I really feel like that they're taking away the real things that make us unique while making us think that they want us to be more unique. But the entire thing is a big co-opting of humanity to make us all the same. So there you have my theory.
I missed most of it because I was really distracted. We could just do it again if we're going to do it right now.
Oh, that's like a Picasso. It'll never come out the same way again.
You're such an artiste. I was just going to say basketball. That's like my answer.
Just for no reason. One word.
Well, no, because I think I could have dominated women's basketball. So it's kind of a selfish thing for me.
You're just thinking about yourself.
Exactly.
You know.
All right, I think we should do it.
I just
Why?
I mean,
Somebody's not into it?
You have your wine. Everybody.
We're good. All right, let's have at it then.
Okay.
We can edit out the entire first part.
I'm going to edit out the entire first part. The video will always be this. Well, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
There you go.
But we're going to start in. Let me set my shit up.
That was the best intro ever.
Let me set my shit up.
I'm gonna set my shit up right now.
Do it.
Okay. We'll do the same pointless question, and we'll just try to recreate what we have already done.
I'll let somebody else go first.
All right. So we're going to start in 3, 2. Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Can you imagine a world of abundance, free energy, peace, stability, unity, and progress? Can you imagine a world where you can be healed, free of side effects, utilize the principles of nature to live in harmony, and accomplish amazing feats of engineering and construction with relative ease? In this modern world where we are taught that most of nature should be feared, that we are a destructive viral infection on the face of the earth, that everything is in short supply, and that you have to eke out what you can, even if it means turning on your brethren, that world is a difficult one for us to imagine. What is even more difficult to imagine is that the world of prosperity I've described may have existed only a few generations ago. So let's talk MudFlood with our panelists tonight. But first, before I introduce our peeps, I want to tell you that Rogueways invites you to join us in the Eyes Open Facebook group, on the rogueways.org website, or on the Rogueways YouTube channel. We have a pretty cool community of open-minded people that would love to see you around. I love you all so much, and I do this shit just for the fuck of it. But if you want to support what I'm doing, I would love to give you something back for it. So go check out the offers I have for you, and feel free to kick a little something my way if you love Rogueways or any of my other work. I appreciate you deeply, and I'm honored by your gifts. Now, let's meet our panelists. We have Claude Furry. He's the unofficial co-host of Rogueways, a man with a penchant for synchronicity, a follower of wisdom and knowledge wherever it leads him, an intrepid researcher and seeker for truth, and a motherfucking pimp-ass human being. Claude, thank you as always for being here.
It is always my pleasure. It's so much fun. I'm addicted.
We also have Johnny Bravado back once again. He is the man on the couch. When you listen to the podcast of Rogue Ways, this badass's musical prowess will grace your earballs. And if you're lucky enough, he'll tear your brain apart with laughter. He is the creator of a prolific amount of gorgeously inspired paintings and sketches, a genius lyricist, a talented musician, a gentleman, and a scholar. Johnny, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. That was very polite.
It was all
What a kind intro.
it was all true, too. Chris-Anne Zalby is here, an angelic creature of divine light. Chris-Anne radiates goodness, chill, and mystery as she explores the sacred and the hidden, pondering paradigms and tripping down rabbit holes with a gentleness that is virtually unmatched. Chris-Anne inspires people to be their highest selves and to wander in the wells of wisdom with her. Chris-Anne, thank you for being here.
I'm honored. Thank you.
So we have our pointless question of the episode as always. And the question is, now that we've seen the transgendered women smash the competition in women's handball, what is the next sport that you think we will see a biological human male dominating biologically women's leagues, and why? Nobody wants to touch that.
Y'all go ahead, have fun.
That is a tough one to answer. I was just gonna say basketball because I could just see it for some reason, because it hasn't wrestling and other track stuff already kind of been dominated. I haven't seen a born male go into the WNBA yet, so that's my hopes and dreams. only to like, I mean, I'm all for equality or whatnot, but there's like a point where you got to draw the line. And at least in basketball, people won't be getting like their necks broken and stuff. So that's
men, biological males tend to be taller than women, and in basketball, isn't that an advantage too?
It could be, but I used to get my ass kicked a lot, even in middle school, by women when we played basketball. So, so I'm a bad person to ask as far as that's concerned. But I still have hopes and dreams of entering the WNBA. So,
what do you think, Claude?
I won't go off on another long diatribe about it.
We support your choice.
But does it really matter? I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, I don't know, a while back, and he had somebody on, a doctor or something, that were talking about this, and I think it was whenever, like Johnny was saying, the dude won the wrestling, was it the Olympics or something like that?
I want to say it was, but I don't remember. I just remember reading it and just thinking, Jesus Christ.
So they were talking
I pray to.
And he was talking about the bone mass in men is completely different. Your muscle structure is different. You're just naturally stronger. Are they just trying to make women's sports unfair by doing this? I mean, look at, for God's sakes, Caitlyn Jenner. They've already had a dude win Women of the Year, or Woman of the Year, rather. What are they doing?
A woman won Women of the Year. It's just a transgendered woman.
Yes. Okay, you're right.
Just saying.
Yes, you're right. I'm wrong. But
a biological male won Women of the Year.
Yes. It makes no sense to me.
What do you think, Chris-Anne?
I was thinking like track and field, but then I was thinking maybe something like bowling. Something weird.
See, I was trying to think bowling might be one of the ones where there is no difference, where everyone can be equal. So maybe that one should be.
Right.
I don't actually know, though.
Pretty killer women bowlers. That one's a pretty even playing field. I don't know.
I think so, yeah.
Dude,
I think it's natural.
My mom is a bomb-ass bowler. I just wanted to give a shout out to my
mom. Pretty good bowler.
I'm really good if there's bumpers up. Like when I go,
I'm really bad even if there's bumpers up, so I'm her disappointment, I'm sure.
My wife kicks my ass at bowling, so yeah. I'm like, that's what I say. Just keep it mixed gender. Do it.
I'd say like shooting could probably be like pretty equal. Like it shouldn't matter maybe if there's men and women doing it at the same time. I just think I was like, oh, probably MMA would be the most ridiculous, right? Because men are bigger.
They've already done that.
They have.
But yeah, then I found out they have, and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It's all
But
Yeah,
you know,
like
you're
Shattered
doing something.
Six.
There
Oh.
are sports out there already where they do like what do they call it in tennis? A mixed match, something like that, where it's a male and female team. They've got entire tournaments for that. I'm sure they have other sports that do it too.
Pretty sure you made that up.
No, I didn't. Pool's a good one.
There you go.
No, it doesn't matter who plays
Yeah.
pool. So yeah,
Cricket.
cricket.
We never talk about cricket enough in the States.
It's those stupid English sports, man. They don't even make any sense. Come on. There's just got like 5 referees running around there. You don't know what they're doing. They're just running around. Good stuff.
Jeff made a good point that once the androids want to compete, we'll have to recognize their rights as sentient beings and let them do it too.
Oh, maybe that's what this is all about.
I like the
That'd be
idea of
amazing.
competitive eating, though, from Brett. I wonder which biological sex would have the advantage in competitive eating.
So I've spent some time down the rabbit hole on YouTube watching competitive eating. There's some amazing channels. You guys haven't done this, I highly recommend it. Some of these girls that do the competitive eating, they weigh like 105 pounds, and you're sitting there and you watch them destroy 60 hot dogs. I'm like, where are you putting this?
I'm sorry. That sounds disturbing.
It's awesome to watch.
Girl, where'd you get your skills? Okay, I'm sorry. Well, let's move on.
Oh, Tartarians, eh?
We're talking Tartaria and the MudFlood theory, which is a newer thing that's sweeping the conspiracy world. So does anybody want to tell us what's the alleged alternative timeline of this possible alternative history that we're talking about?
I think there's a few. I came across several. One of the fun ones that I came across had to do with, they were Martians or whatever, and then spread out on Earth. What is it? There's one where there were gray aliens, some ancient race of gray aliens. And I've got a whole theory I've been working on of my own for an alternative timeline, but I don't know if I'm ready to reveal that or not. So,
Holding.
I had heard something like the craziest timeline I heard. Well, actually, I'll wait. What do you think, Chrisanne? Do you know anything about the timeline?
Well, it seems like they're saying it's 200 years that this all happened.
200 years ago that our real
Yeah.
history was swept under the rug and our new timeline
Right.
was
So it's like
started?
1,000 years got lost.
Okay.
So somewhere in there, they just added another 1,000. So maybe around 800 they added
So that
1,000 years.
I could
700?
totally buy that, and that fits right in with what I wasn't really ready to talk about, but that's perfect.
Right. Somebody was talking about like the changing whenever they switched over the system, they added 1,000 years, and it just made everything work to their advantage. But I mean, there's so many other reasons why. I don't know. It could be just 200 years ago, a cycle ended, and we were at such a low point in consciousness that we just forgot who we were. I mean, when it plunges all the way into the Iron Age, like, do we just forget everything?
maybe.
Just naturally,
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's really like the evil people against us and a whole conspiracy in that sense, or if it's just sort of a cycle where we all
Right.
just get mind wiped and then we start over.
Yeah, I like that Yuga cycle. The consciousness dips down as low as it can possibly get. What does happen when that
Right.
occurs? And so
Right.
you're suggesting perhaps that a couple hundred years ago, when the alternative timeline sort of would have started, that's when we were at the lowest point of the Kali Yuga, basically.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about it because it's new.
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
even.
Nobody
We're
knows.
coming
It's all
up with
speculation.
theories. Right.
Well, because the craziest alternative timeline I heard about MudFlood was that it was like 100 years ago,
Yes.
right? So like the beginning,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
1920 or something. And I'm like, that's kind of pushing
They
it
were
for my belief.
Yeah.
Covering stuff up
Yeah.
as late as the 1950s. So yeah, it's crazy.
But what I was thinking about that though is back before we were all connected with the web and like all this information really fast, what if it like certain areas were reset at like certain times and whatnot? I don't know how that would work. I mean, because all of this is kind of speculative right now, but without, you know, AOL, that's what I use for the internet is AOL and dial-up. But without that, how would you know if they were like say they just reset like Tartaria, because they say that existed as recently as like the 1920s, 1930s or something.
So that's why
you wouldn't know about that like without the World Wide Web. Be easier to cover stuff like that up.
True.
Okay, you want to go down a little rabbit hole? I just it's aching to come out. So I think a thing that I've been kind of working on recently is, and I think Crow said this on your show the other day too. I think Michael One might have said it too. Words have meaning. We've heard that several times. Words mean things, and I like to go back and think about when Rome ruled the world, and quote unquote ruled the world. We think Rome did. Part of this whole theory is the fact that we don't even think, if you're following this theory, that Rome even built the structures that they lived in. That was all Tartarian stuff. Same with Egypt. But somewhere around 1 AD or whatever it was, the burning of the Library of Alexandria happened. Actually, I think it was around 300 AD. Anyway, and that's the official narrative of what happened, and all this information, all this stuff was lost. Then we went into the Dark Ages. Now remember that words have meaning. Who ruled all of Europe during the Dark Ages? The church. They suppressed information. People, no one learned anything. The lifespan of people went down in some places to around 30 years. People, that was considered old at some time period, some points in history.
Allegedly.
Mm-hmm. And so 1,500 years goes by of this Dark Ages, and the 17th. Then we have the quote unquote Renaissance happen, and the Enlightenment. And you look at what those words mean. The Enlightenment, it's a boom of information. And then after that, we have the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution, and then we're into the 1900s, and then suddenly we have all this technology, and it's just exponential growth of technology. What happened for that 1,500 years?
Right.
Before that,
right?
Were people just not thinking? Was no one?
We were just in the field packing mud into like other containers.
Yeah, I have this image of what is it from Monty Python? They're out there in the field plucking mud up, right? Help me, I'm being oppressed.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, and then there's that guy that was on the Higher Side Chats that was talking about how a bunch of our history was just inserted like 1,000 years maybe, or so. Wouldn't that correlate with this possible theory as well? A lot of people speculate about that.
Yes, absolutely. We have look at medieval Europe, quote unquote medieval Europe. We have all these castles, all these giant structures, Stonehenge, things like this, all these crazy monoliths that are all over Europe.
Wait, let's hold off on that.
Right. So what I'll say is we don't have an explanation for them that other than the official narrative of history. So we have all this history of these different empires, that the Mongols, the the Russian Empire, all these different empires that built these structures. England,
Mayans.
Well, we can get into the Mayans a little separately. This is just Europe, not even taking into account Africa, South America, North America, Canada. The narrative doesn't. If you follow the official narrative of history that you learn sitting in class, and then look at all the stuff that's there, it doesn't really add up. It's like they built all these amazing structures, yet everyone had a 30-year lifespan for these periods of years, and there was just this crazy oppression that happened, and yet all these amazing, glorious structures were built. I don't buy it.
Yeah.
So,
right.
And they're advanced and amazing, just seemingly out of nowhere. Well, okay, so let's talk about the Tartars. Tartarians, who are these people? Where are they allegedly, like, where's their place in accepted history, I guess? Who are they, supposedly? Do you want to tell us anything about it, Chris Ann?
It's, I only came across like 2 bits. One of them was like a translated Russian web page. So it's weird because it talks about Napoleon and Russia and the whole comet that happened around the time. And inside that story, there is this Tartarian thing. It's like you only get bits and pieces of it. And oh my God, then they have this like weird runic type of language. So it's
weird.
like, how long ago were they? Or, like, are we talking like we just found them? Maybe they were millions of, like the last 2 cycles ago. So it's like, I don't really know. I don't think there's enough information. According to the old maps, they're like the entire northern hemisphere as we know it.
Wow. So according
yeah.
to Wikipedia, the Tatars are not
Yeah.
the Tartars. Is that like who we're saying they are?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, because I thought there was an actual Tartars in history, in accepted history, but maybe it's Tatar. I don't know. But they're Russian, Turkish-speaking people living mainly in Russia and other post-Soviet countries in the 13th century.
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know. This may be like the last stronghold or, the last remaining people. I don't know.
Yeah.
They've just, I mean,
they're completely
it's hard.
erased well enough.
I was trying to research that one. I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot on it.
Yeah.
And that almost makes you wonder, did they just get like completely wiped from history that well? Like, is the cover up that deep? Or is it something they just put out to make everybody in the conspiracy world like have new stuff to read about?
Right.
Like,
I know,
you guys
I thought
are
about
bored.
that too.
Well, isn't it? Maybe I'm having a Mandela effect, but I swear to God, I've heard of and learned about the Tartars in history, and now.
Well, you do have pictures there. If you Google it, you do have pictures of these guys wearing these like really, they become kind of mixed with the Mongolians, the Mongols.
Right.
But this conversation you guys having triggered something in my mind. If you think back to the Thule Society in Nazi Germany, and I'm sitting here trying to remember the name of this damn book. A book came out, I think it was in the 1800s, and it was a detailed telling of basically the previous 2,000 years of history. And it became, I want to say it's Heinrich Himmler. Like, I think that was the guy that it was. Anyway, it became kind of his Bible. And it was kind of the key to Nazi occultism. And it laid out the history of the Aryan races and all this wild stuff. And then sometime around in that time period, it got quote unquote debunked. Right. So what do you do when you want to suppress history? You debunk stuff. So I'm gonna have to look more into that because I can't even remember the name of the book right now. But because I didn't spend a whole lot of time reading about it. But I thought that was kind of interesting, talking about suppressed history or hidden history. And you have this book that supposedly tells a 2,000-year history of the Earth, and then it just disappears. So, and then we have weird stuff too, like the Voynich manuscript with all this bizarre writing, and then like Chris Ann was talking about, that no one can translate this thing, and we have the Elder Futhark, which is an ancient language, and that matches up, I guess, pretty well to what they say the Tartarian runes look like.
And that's what's funny about that is because I've heard, I think it was Max Egan was talking about how we still have a bunch of languages and writings that we haven't cracked, and he was thinking that maybe the Tartarian dialect and writings might be key because it predates everything. His theory, or some of the theories I've heard, is that these were like the first advanced people, and everything like branched out from it, and that's why using their runes or their writing and stuff, we might be able to translate these lost languages that they haven't yet figured out, which is pretty interesting. But
right. See, I always hear theories
that is interesting,
and I like to tie them back to the story of the Tower of Babel, in the Bible, in the Christian Bible. You know?
I was just thinking of that.
Yeah, didn't that work out so well?
Yeah.
We've got this crazy advanced civilization, and they're building this tower to God. And I always liken that story to like building AI, right? And it crumbles. God's you're getting too close to God. Boom, it crumbles, and then suddenly the tongues of every nation, everybody's split and everybody's talking different.
Well, it could be too, like what Chrisanne was saying, that it's more like a metaphor or symbol for the age changing. So you were getting too close to God, you're in the golden age and you're at your height, and then, shit started to go down and fall apart and everyone sort of scattered and forgot.
Right. And that really works out well for all of the bizarre ruins that are everywhere too, that nobody can really explain. So
interesting. All right. So what evidence do we have that Tartaria was possibly a reality?
I saw and I like, it's just like everything else. So the CIA is involved, but there was a FOIA document that actually mentioned Tartaria.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, why would they even make that unless it was my conspiracy brain is like, did they create it? Is it like the whole like flat Earth, round Earth, hollow Earth? Let's sow division and here's Tartaria all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But the fact they even mentioned it is really weird to me. And they did have, according to what I was looking at, they did have like flags and whatnot, like certain like flag symbols and stuff. And if you weren't a nation, why would you have a flag?
Yeah. What did the flag
never
look
made
like?
a flag. If I remember correctly, it was kind of medieval. It was like a lion. I should look it up.
I think they had an owl too, didn't they?
Maybe
What's
I
that?
can find it.
I think they had an owl too, and an owl and a griffin.
See, and if they have, yeah, it was a griffin. You're right. It was a griffin.
Tatarstan is a place actually exists in Russia. Okay, so I'm seeing a flag with a griffin, and it's on a yellow background with a white sort of arrow.
That was the one I saw, yeah.
I will show people that really quick. This is a really bad picture, guys, but here you go.
Yeah, that's the one I've seen.
That's it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty cool. That harkens back to dragons and...
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they were griffin folk.
Gryffindor. Okay, sorry.
Maybe they bred dragons, and that's why we have dinosaur bones everywhere.
Dude, I love it.
Actually, you know what? On the Starfort videos, like, I don't know, someone was reading something from, I don't know. Of course, I watched so much crap. I don't know where I saw this, but they talked about how the dragon was outside the walls of the fort. So it's like, did they deal with these type of creatures at that time, And then, I mean, I don't know. Were any of them like on their side? They helped them win? I don't know. We don't know their stories, so they become the flag of the nation or whatever. But
interesting.
It could have been a time.
Putting dots together. So one of the things that I went to a creationist museum in Glen Rose, Texas, and they were talking about the way the atmosphere would have looked in the time that dinosaurs roamed the earth. So like if there were a brontosaurus walking around here in Texas right now, with the size of the brontosaurus's nose, it would have to breathe so fast that its head would basically catch on fire because the atmosphere's too thin. So it was a lot thicker back then. And then, I draw that to another one of the videos I was watching on the star forts, and they were talking about how the Tartarians would have these what do they call them, kind of antennas that collected electromagnetic energy, and the entire area around the star fort would become kind of I don't even know what the word
like a force field type thing.
Yeah, sort of like a force field, but all of the stuff that grew inside there was a lot healthier, and things got bigger. So that's why we have those stories of like giants and things like that, because this area literally caused things to grow bigger, caused things to be stronger. And that's so the entire world, according to the theory, was entirely encompassed in this sort of electromagnetic energy capturing field thing, right? This technology. Right. And so we have all these now we're finding dinosaur bones everywhere, right? Just everywhere. We've got museums full of them, and we know that they can't exist in the way the world is right now. They literally couldn't breathe. So were they breeding? Was this their, maybe that was their cows and their war animals and things like that? And then you get into, I don't want to jump ahead, but then you
Dude, well, maybe we should, because that connects perfectly with mud fossils, which is just, it's not a connected topic. They just both have mud in their name, but like maybe they are connected.
So anyway, it's an interesting theory to think about it that way. Maybe it's all connected to Tartaria.
Okay, let's come back to mud fossils later, and that could explain like if they are connected. But that actually gets into the next question anyway, which is what types of technology might have existed in this Tartaria that we no longer have access to. So that's one of them that you're talking about that could promote the growth of living beings.
Well, look what they're trying to do right now. That's another one of the videos was talking about how we're sort of trying to recreate that technology right now. What were they just talking about the other day on the news? They sort of came out and revealed that chemtrails are actually a thing. They're changing the atmosphere again. So
yeah.
Well, they say all these buildings, well, they have power stations too, but the antennas, they say it's like free energy collection. Yeah. So they just gathered it from the ethers. They were able to just harness the electricity right into all the buildings. And I mean, I really don't know what they dispersed them to, but it seems like they had electric lights. They could light, the town up or whatever. Like they weren't really gas lights. They were lit some other way.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other technology, I forgot what it was.
Here, let's look at some pictures of the alleged technology that we're talking about so people can see. Yeah. So first of all, this is what we're saying. What they're saying, what the theory is saying, is that throughout the world, invading forces defeated Tartaria and appropriated their palaces and power stations and turned it into all the things that we see now, like museums, universities, theaters, these kind of grand buildings we see around the world, like things like the Hagia Sophia. And so this is what you guys were describing would be like this spire here would like collect etheric energy, and these domes would kind of like coil it down into the building somehow. Mm-hmm. And we just see this everywhere, and it's like this grand architecture. And it has always been interesting to me, like, why did we used to build shit like this? It's so epic. I mean, look at the detail, like, and now we just don't.
On this one in particular, one of the things that I noticed about this one is you can see the triptych built into it in the middle under the arch. There's the
here
the arches, yeah, and that's something you see in a lot of those old buildings too.
Yeah,
that entryway, that they call it the triptych, right? It's
right.
2 doors with one in the middle.
And it makes me wonder if, like, this
the other
Muslim symbol was added later. Like there was always this rod there, but then like our religious iconography was placed later, maybe.
I think it was.
If
coming from the slant of this theory or this being true, what we consider religion would be wrong or invented, and all of that would have been added later. So.
I should say that these images came from our group member Sasha McDonald. Thank you very much. And she got them from John Levy, who has a whole channel like devoted to this stuff. So if you guys want to research more, that's totally where you should go.
Hey, there's the triptych again. Look.
Where?
Go back to the bridge. See? Got the
like 1, 2, 3.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the Ingvaz rune right there in the middle of that, kind of that creates, and you see that everywhere. And everybody says, "Oh, those are support beams." Man, it looks like an Ingvaz.
Yeah, I mean that's the idea too, right? That all the shapes, all of the numbers of things, the spires, the shape, like all of it work together to harness the naturally occurring energy that's all around us. There's a biggie, the Taj Mahal.
They all have pipe organs, like most of these houses, like.
Here, I'll find one for you.
Those and the Carnegies, and they all have the pipe organs, and they're like, when they demolished them, they just like threw them all away. But
these pipe organs
they
here.
said,
"Oh yeah,
they gave off like a frequency, either it's like a healing frequency or whatever it was, their type of knowledge of vibration, like the cymatics with the rose windows.
Yeah.
We
They,
always hear
I mean,
tuned to 432 hertz, and all of these holy rooms, right? They always resonate at 432 hertz.
Yeah.
Dude.
yeah.
So
And
like
it's weird
the
too, like the other.
you're saying, Chrisanne, that the actual shape or the designs in the windows are a cymatic design, and that's part of why the
Somebody was researching that. Yeah, they said,
Yeah.
well, maybe this was a signature of the building. Like every building has a different window, and that particular design was the cymatic signature of that building. So, like, if all the different churches have a different rose window.
That's so
So
cool.
somebody was looking into, I don't know, she had a technique to find that frequency
Hmm.
in some of the churches just to investigate it. But I mean, the guy was really saying, I wonder if it would match up to the rose window.
Yeah.
Whoa! I just had an epiphany. So the other day I was watching some kind of scientific video, and the guy was talking about he had these. He was looking at water underneath an electron microscope, and he would put plant molecules into or a piece of a plant into water, and then he would filter water out anyway. And he discovered that water had a memory. So basically, the molecules of water would actually change shape depending on what plant or whatever was in there. So I wonder if the shape, that geometric pattern of the rose window, because we also see that in these Tartaria videos, they always also talk about that in front of these power stations, they always have a pond or something out front, right?
Right.
So I wonder if somehow that would tie in, and that rose-shaped window would be the same cymatic shape of the sound that's generated there, and that's somehow input into the water out there, and that's becomes what in today's day and time we think of, what we hear about holy water, right?
Yeah, I was going to say like the water of life. Like it is like holy water.
We have all kinds of myths about that, the fountain of youth, water, all that fun stuff. So
it's true. Wow.
There's a thing.
And then there's the other weird thing about the lack of toilets, like these. There aren't any bathrooms in any of these. So I mean, I've even thought, were they even human?
Wow.
Like, did they have the ability? Or did they just drink the water of life? Maybe that was all they needed. They just took that in, and that. I mean, a lot of people are water fasting now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you really need to eat, or are we supposed to be eating?
Mm-hmm.
Did we degenerate?
Right. Oh, that's fascinating.
Having to eat.
I keep hearing about water fasting lately, and I didn't even know that was a thing. And people talk about the waters of life when they're water fasting, and I don't know anything about that, but.
Well, when you dig into esoterica, you end up coming across yoga videos and things like that, and they'll talk about, what do they call it? Basically eating sunlight.
Breatharians.
Breatharians.
But if you could tie this back into the dinosaur thing with how they, if they use dinosaurs the way we were talking about earlier, maybe they sustain themselves the same way.
Maybe. I didn't want it to be too awkward of a silence for you.
Right.
That is weird though too. They didn't have the the restrooms, and they said that they didn't even have heating in a lot of those old buildings, which you would be like, oh, they just used fire or whatever. But there was no evidence they had anything like that either. They were thinking it was some sort of energy structure. But then again, if they weren't even human, then maybe they didn't need. Maybe they were always warm on the inside from being non-human.
I was thinking towards like a type of human that we devolved from more than aliens or something, but I don't know anything. So what do I know?
But that's what's fun about this whole topic is it's so speculative. It's so new that, and if it was erased, then how the hell will we ever really know? We'll just have to speculate forever.
So
dragon machines.
What if they were reptilians though? And then, because when we talk about, and I'm trying to see if there's a question for this. Do you have one for when they went into decline? Because if you do, then I'll wait.
I am not sure, but before we get off this topic, I want to, so hold that thought, but I want to go one more technological technology of the Tartarian Empire that we may have lost. Like this clock is an astronomical clock.
Yep.
Supposedly in 1410 it was built, but it shows all of these astrological bodies and their rotations, and like we don't do this anymore. Like I would love to have this clock on my, wrist. Instead I've got this phone in my pocket.
But astrology
Right.
is still a huge thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like a disgraced science, but obviously at some point people respected it a lot more.
But I look at this, and the first thing I think of is Michael Wan, though, Lindsay. And
Michael's watching right now.
right,
What up,
so
Michael?
he talks about the board that he made, and it's such a beautiful story, and it's such a synchronicity that type of technology is brought up when you look at this ancient history of these Tartarians, or the theories of the Tartarians. And then, we think about, whether you think you lived a past life or whatever it is, or things enter your mind through the Akashic record or something, and you get these ideas to build these wonderful things, and they somehow match up to these ancient things that existed in the past, and you're like, holy crap, I didn't just come up with that.
Right.
That's pretty cool. So Michael's actually saying it's the sun, which is the generator of the energy. There's a reason why they worship the sun. The stained glass works with the photo layer. Eating food keeps us in physical form. So that came up on Crow as well. The interview we did with Crow the other day is that food is sort of like drawing you more into this dense level of being. Whereas if you were like just drinking the waters of life, or like getting your energy from the sun, maybe you would elevate a bit in your consciousness, or literally physically, or who knows, right? So maybe if we're saying like they weren't quite human, maybe we're saying they were, again, like humans that were less devolved and less materially connected than we are.
Wow,
I
that
believe
jumps
that.
into a totally other conspiracy theory, though, that we evolved from plants, and they were type plant people. So that gets into H.P. Lovecraft stuff.
I'm like, is that a theory, or are you just reading Lovecraft?
Well, people talk about it, and it's written
Right.
in Lovecraft. That was the ancient ones. They look like these giant vegetables that walked around. So
I've always said I'd rather be a tree. Like trees are just the most giving, beautiful spirits on this planet.
That's true, unless you meet that little bastard ass kid from the Giving Tree book. They'll rip you apart.
one of the biggest things right now is to be a vegetarian. So
True. Chrisanne, I feel like you were going to say something a little bit ago.
Shoot, I don't know what I was gonna say. It was kind of about like devolving, like Persephone, the whole thing about she ate the fruit from the underworld and she was stuck there.
Yeah.
Like maybe because we partake of this environment, we're stuck in this karmic cycle of, whereas before we didn't eat from that other tree or whatever, but it kind of ties into the whole eating anything from here.
Yeah.
With the whole no toilets, and Pluto and Mars and Scorpio are always associated with like the bowels, it's kind of that whole thing. So when we devolve, maybe we take on that part of our body too.
Yeah. We're just lower in the chakra
In the
system.
lower Iron Age. Yeah.
Interesting. I like it. I like how it
So
connects
just
too
an
with
idea.
the fairy, the fae folk lore is that you shouldn't eat their food because you'll be stuck there, and it kind of connects with that as well.
Interesting.
All right, let's move forward. So we want to talk now about what kind of records. So we've got like the Bible, it's supposedly this ancient record thousands of years ago. We have the water erosion on the Sphinx, which seems to point to many, many thousands of years ago. We have carbon dating, places like Göbekli Tepe that are allegedly like 14,000 years old or so. And all this apparent evidence that we have that history stretches far, far back into antiquity. Like Graham Hancock says, things just keep getting older and older. So how does this fit in with the MudFlood idea, saying that actually those things weren't even that long ago, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if it was just something they found and then pretended it was theirs. I mean, who knows when this was, when the Tartarians were this empire, like if this was pre-Atlantis even, like when were these people? Like how long ago was it? Because if this was submerged and Atlantis was not, how many times have we changed the whole surface of the earth? How old was this iteration of the world? I mean, it could still all work with the Atlantis and, but this maybe was before that, I don't know. Or it could have been after it, but since our minds were wiped, maybe there was nothing written after that to tell the story of this particular civilization.
I think we're given some revelation of intent in the Christian Bible. If you look at the story of Moses, when they're coming out of Egypt and they get to Canaan, and they send 40 scouts into Canaan, and they're not supposed to, and because they did that transgression, God tells Moses, "No, you've got to walk around in the desert for 40 years," and that gives them time to basically kill off an entire generation so that none of them will remember that they transgressed against God. By the time they eventually are able to turn around and get back and go into Israel or Canaan, it's an entirely new generation of people who have no memory of that transgression against God. And I like to liken that to the Dark Ages and what's the best way to get people to forget about their own history. Let generation upon generation die with having no memory of that history, and basically all you're left with is this oral record that's passed down from generation to generation. And we've all played the game of telephone and
right
in grade school, and it changes, as people pass the story along, until we're left with these myths and legends that only contain little hints at the truth. And,
I'm so in opposition to you about this because because so the people who pass down oral history, their methods of memorizing are far superior to ours.
Well,
and
there is that. I'll give you that.
It's proven like that their ability to transfer information over generations is like fucking solid. So their methodology is better and their ability is better. And then they also have this like triple layer of information that we can't even fathom, where like there's a story you're telling, and then there's the like symbolism of it, and then there's like the deepest level of it. I can't even explain it because I don't understand it, but there's 3 levels to each one of those myths. And so we can look at it like even I don't even know. I have to stop. I don't know enough details to explain it, but I don't really agree. I think actually the oral histories are more accurate than some other histories because you can't go in and edit it.
Have to look at the game of telephone that we're taught in kindergarten then and look at it as telling us to not believe what we hear.
Yeah. But right? And then because so you look at like
all the research I've done in Freemasonry, all of it is oral tradition. They don't write anything down. When you go to Freemasonry as, whatever level 1, you're assigned a person, and that person gives you shit to memorize. And as you go up, you got to memorize more shit. And that's all it is.
Yeah, but if your intent was to deceive, then the passing of information through time or through word of mouth would be easily manipulated.
That's true.
I mean, that's the whole theory that they had, that the foundlings, like, I don't know if you saw any of that when you were researching, but there were all these like areas where they just brought in like shitloads of orphans on like trains and buses and just put them in communities that they might have been like communities they like, and they're like, let's just get rid of all the adults except these 2 adults that are going to teach these children what's what. That would be a really easy way to manipulate.
Right.
I have to draw a parallel to what's going on in modern day with
with immigration and it's totally similar. It's disruptive to mixed cultures, especially with no plan of how to integrate those cultures. But even then, you're saying, I mean, if those kids that you brought in allegedly to these new places where you had like wiped out the previous Tartarian civilization and you're trying to reestablish some deceptive narrative about what you're alleging is the truth, if those kids had learned their oral history, you couldn't change that. So, but you can easily change text. Like you can make a text and say, this is 2,000 years old. I swear to God. Or you can like, oh, this 2,000-year-old text, and you can change it and make it whatever you want and then represent it and be like, no, this is the same one I had yesterday. But you can't do that with an oral history that you've memorized.
That's true.
I mean, maybe you can now with technology, we can like erase memories and implant them allegedly or whatever.
With 5G, we're all going to be quite clean
yeah.
in like a year.
Exactly.
Oh, that makes me question a lot of stuff though, because one of my mantras is belief is the enemy of knowing, and that's been my mantra for a long time. But what do you believe? You believe things that you're told,
right?
So maybe belief isn't the enemy of knowing.
And I believe everything that you tell me, Claude.
I know you do.
I'm pretty much screwed.
I just got called out by Lindsay, so I'd be careful believing me.
So, like, let's look at some of the ways this alternative history, if there's this Tartarian empire that possibly goes back like tens of thousands of years and we don't have a memory of it, what are some of the ways that this alternative history would have been hidden? We talked about a few, right? Like bringing in the kids. What other methods do we have that we came across in research?
Mud floods.
Right. I mean, I was thinking with the whole children thing, just killing off all the adults who were resistant to changing the story. So if you kill off all the adults and take the children, then you can reprogram the world. I mean, it's almost like in the Bible where they killed all the babies. It's almost like they killed the adults and took the children.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was even thinking like Back to the Future, how it has so much predictive programming in it, not only just with 9/11 and now, you know, like Trump, you know, the whole photo erasing, you know, like when he changes the past, the photo disappears and he's able to put everything back in order. Yeah. And sometimes I even think, what the hell? Did somebody time travel and now we're seeing weird, like, why didn't we see this before?
Right.
I was going to say, you threw a huge synchronicity at me, Omi. I just talked about this at length. So, yeah, sorry.
Well, no, I mean, it's like we seem like we're suddenly like, oh my God, I never saw this before, even though it was here all along. It's
well,
like,
that's true of like, okay, I'm just going to show this image now because this actually gets to the heart of what MudFlood even means and how it connects to everything we're talking about. So this is, oh my God, I'm sorry. I don't know what city this is, but you can see how under what we would see, like this is street level for us. These are our buildings. And then under here, we've got this fucking temple or whatever, you know, and you can see that it's been covered by just like however much mud. It would have gone all the way up to here. So the idea is that somehow a lot of these ancient structures were literally covered over by mud. But I believe that it's gone on past that, right? And now we see, sorry, let me find some pictures.
Yeah, because there's like a lot, even in the States and other places that are, some of them aren't even that amazingly built. Like there's, I want to say it was in Nevada or something, and I saw images of, it was like the same thing, like these old buildings, and you could tell like it looked like it was like street level, but it was built like slanted. I don't know. I guess I wish I had imagery to explain it better.
Yeah.
But it was weird, but you could see that like clearly the streets were made.
Is this the church?
I don't know.
Like out west?
There was like one of a church. There was one that was just like a normal hotel. I want to say it was like a hotel or something, but you could tell they didn't build it like perfectly to be like, you know, the roads going down diagonal down the side or whatever. It was really weird. Like there was a huge thing. And I wonder if that happens. And then like I believe happened with like the pyramids and stuff. People just showed up and were like, oh shit, that's pretty cool. Let's just take that over. This is ours now. And this is where we live. And
so maybe the pyramids are actually way deeper.
Yes.
I wouldn't doubt it.
So remember how Easter Island went deeper? Like and then the picture we just showed went deeper. Here's another possible pyramid that's been covered up because somebody was saying that they don't just cover it in mud. It shouldn't even be called MudFlood anymore. They covered it with whatever they could. So like here they covered it with vegetation, or like, as this picture points out, the level of water was raised. Like Claude, you were just saying, maybe the pyramids go much deeper, like down to here or who knows if you extend it out.
Now,
And
I
then-
wasn't able to actually find anything on this, but one of the and maybe there's some stuff out there, but one of the parallels that I drew was how the flood myth exists all over the world in almost every single religion. You've got this myth of a flood happening, and then there's some guy, he's usually got a boat. In Christianity, it's Noah, and they save humanity and a bunch of animals and then repopulate the earth. We all know that story.
Right.
And what's the best way to cover the world in mud is to flood it.
Flood it, yeah. So
Yeah.
like this flood, and Chris is saying maybe in the chat, Chris Phoenix is saying maybe there's this, civilization it was covered out. Maybe it wasn't like these, maybe it wasn't a flood like an attack. Maybe it actually was just a natural disaster. But if you look at like Göbekli Tepe, filled in with little tiny pebbles,
Yeah.
right? Like covered in totally intentionally. Same with Mount Nimrud. If you go to the top, so at the top of Mount Nimrud, there's a bunch of statues that people go visit, and it's like, that's why they go. But when I got there, I was lucky enough to go. When I got there, I was like, why is there a pyramid of pebbles behind these statues? That's way more interesting than the statues themselves. Is there's this perfect pyramid, and it's the tiny little pebbles, and it's the same pebbles that very nearby Göbekli Tepe was covered with. So I feel like there's probably a fucking pyramid up there that they covered too. So, I mean, if you flood with mud or water or cover with vegetation or cover with stones, all of these biggest and most powerful energetic gatherers or whatever they were, then I guess maybe it'd be easier to wipe out a people and their memory.
You want to go down a hypothetical rabbit hole real quick?
Oh,
Duh.
God.
What's one of the most famous archaeological and historical inventions that we give to the Romans? And then there was a guy on the Higher Set chat the other day. He was talking about it existing in Phoenix, Arizona, and then we've got it in all over the place in Asia. Is these big man-made aqueducts all over the place, designed to carry water from one place to the other. And in Rome, we're told it was to provide water to their cities. We don't know why the ones in Phoenix, Arizona really existed. We're told by that guy that it's because they were doing farming and stuff over there, and then the ones in Asia for rice farming and the steppes and all that fun stuff. But maybe that's not why they exist. Maybe they're carrying water from one place to another in order to cover things in mud.
Ooh.
That's what I was just gonna say. The thing I can't wrap my head around is like who and how is like covering all these things from antiquity. Like I can't I can wrap my head around some really weird shit, but I'm like,
Yeah.
they're just some really super powerful being with like a huge bucket that's just like fuck it, they've gotten too smart. Like we're just in a petri dish, so they just wipe it all clean. Like, because it seems like all the collapses, and maybe this is just some shit I made up in my head, but it seems like all these collapses happen when civilizations reach like this peak of like knowledge, or maybe in some cases that there's like the ancient nuke theory and all that stuff. Maybe they got so advanced they just like wiped themselves out or something. But it seems like once the population starts to get to ascend or whatnot, that's when everything seems to just hit the fan and like that whole civilization just gets destroyed. Or unless it's like Rome, then they just like orgied their way to instant death or whatever
Orgy
happened.
your way to instant death by Johnny.
That's my new book.
So I think that relates to the
can-
Tower of Babel story as well, because if
Right.
you achieve too much greatness, then some higher force is maybe going to strike you down. But in this theory, the alleged people who have come to destroy Tartaria and now control our minds or our histories or whatever are referred to as the gray men. And I have no idea what that means.
Well, we have a direct parallels to that with the Greys and
Gray aliens.
yeah.
Which so the gray aliens are this like hive mind robotic like android creatures. Like if you look enough at that sort of culture, like that's what they seem to be. They're not like independent biological creatures. They seem like little robots. So it's weird to think about with like the rise of AI and technology making us stupider and killing us, that maybe that is what the forces that are hiding the past from us are.
I just had a mind-blowing moment. So
This happens 12 times an hour with Claude. I love it.
I love it.
Lindsay, you brought up the Mayans earlier. What's one of the big things that we see in Mayan culture is the elongated skulls, right? And maybe that was the gray aliens as we know them today, as, you know, grays or whatever.
They do have big heads, allegedly.
Right? And that leads me to something else. So when, quote unquote, according to the official history narrative, when, you know, Europeans came to North America, what did they do? They instantly started killing off the North American population, the all of the Native Americans that were here in South and North America, and making sure that they squashed their own histories, killed their religions, converted them to Catholicism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we know that they poisoned blankets with diseases to kill off, you know, older generations, and performed all kinds of cultural crystallization to get them to conform to the ways of European society. And why? Right? You consider if those people were pretty much, you know, landlocked in Europe and then decided to come over to America, why were they doing that? Well, we know that the Aztecs were pretty much at the height of their civilization at that point. Maybe they were getting too powerful and they were getting ready to spread the message of, hey, this is your real history, fuckers. Remember this. So they came over, attacked, and wiped all that away and basically erased the history of generation upon generation of Native Americans that remembered the Tartarian Empire.
Ooh, nice tie-in. So Michael Wan just had dropped a bomb. Gray man, he says, is one layer above the duality world, the 3D or the Masonic. The gray go between the black and the white. It's a Masonic term. And then he says, for example, Henry Kissinger is an example of a gray man in human costume, at least. So that is kind of fascinating to think about how that would tie in with this, especially with like the Tower of Babel shit and
right.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I was thinking of, which I always bring up, are like the orb dudes, you know, in the Renaissance painting.
Oh yeah.
That there's this outside interaction with what's happening. Like it's not even coming from the powers that be. It's coming from
Beyond
nature. It's almost like a nature integrated. I mean, I guess that would be it, an interdimensional intervention, whether for, you know, destruction or for helping us in the 1400s, if that's even a true time.
Yeah.
That article about them fighting in the sky, you know, they saw this battle going on. It seems like it is like almost a spiritual, you know, other dimensional type of effect as well. I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting too that like when you're talking about that, it's making me realize with gray men, or, you know, with whatever those entities are, it seems like they have to have a human working with them in order to make their shit go down. Like, I don't think they can affect the world without us, without our agreement or someone acting for them. And maybe that's the whole role of whatever a gray man is, or what it would be.
What's one of the biggest conspiracy theories when you think about people like David Icke?
Lizard men.
Lizard men. It's the reptilian people.
And women.
Right, and women. Yes, I did say people. So
Same.
I use the proper pronoun. So we know that they lie to us about everything, and we know that the royal they can co-opt any message and turn it to whatever end that they're trying to push. In the conspiracy theory world, the reptilians are known as the bad guys in almost everything. Taking this way back to the beginning of the show, when we're talking about the dinosaurs, maybe they're reptilian people and they're not actually bad guys. Maybe. And they're just inserting that into the conspiracy theory culture as disinformation or co-opting the message and trying to say, no, y'all need to, you know, if you think about these people, we want it to be in the collective consciousness that these are bad people. You know, they're not people. Lizards, you know, whatever. The grays are bad. They abduct you. They perform experiments on you. Meanwhile, maybe it's another group doing it. Just an idea.
It's a
Yeah.
good idea.
Well,
Yeah,
Always be
I've heard
wary.
people say.
always. So that both of those, what Chris Ann brought up in the paintings from the Middle Ages and what you're bringing up, Claude, with the David Icke and lizard people, but what other popular culture references do we have that could hint at this possible truth of Tartaria as a worldwide civilization that has been hidden?
One of my favorites is from Lord of the Rings. And because you guys know that I love finding truth in fiction, I love the story of Numenor. You know, what happened to Numenor? It got that entire. I'm not sure if you guys have read the Silmarillion or not, but it mentions Numenor in Lord of the Rings. But Numenor is where it is the historical sort of birthplace of Strider. Right, his family is from this island of Numenor, and Numenor, sort of like the story of the Tower of Babel, they decide that they're going to travel to the west and invade heaven, basically, because they're jealous that these guys get to live forever. Now, the Numenorians have extended lifespans; they're pretty much giants among men, and they go there at the bidding of Sauron. And gosh, I can't remember the character's name anyway. He gets pissed off and he says, "No, he's basically a god." He says, and he crushes Numenor into the ocean in this flood. It covers Numenor and it covers half of Middle Earth, and it completely destroys Beleriand, and all what we have left by the time Lord of the Rings is around is this sparse land area compared to what was there before the flood. And I love that particular time period in history, the early 1900s, whenever J.R.R. Tolkien was writing this, because we have a lot of people writing these types of stories. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, H.P. Lovecraft, Blavatsky, all these people writing these, just having these crazy visions of these things that they just all come up with very similar stories out of nothing. Or was there a collective consciousness, memory, Akashic record thing going on, and they're telling the story that might be some fact in that for what actually happened.
Yeah, I feel like people can tap into shit like that, whether they mean to or not. But also, isn't it possible that Tolkien was initiated in some way?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if he was a Freemason or anything like that, but he knew a lot of people. He was a member of a lot of book clubs, and we know they were very learned people after World War One, and it's during World War One he was going through all these traumatic events, and he wrote a lot of his stories while he was going through that, and then afterwards he had tons of PTSD, and he let all that out in his writing, and you can see that. And what do we know? One of the purposes of programs like MK Ultra is to break a person down, to get them to reveal greater things about themselves or to have greater knowledge. And war does that, and I think that may have happened with Tolkien. So,
Cracked him open a bit. So what other popular culture references do we have that could possibly tie in?
Right.
Johnny?
The one that I put,
Or Chris Ann?
the He-Man one.
Yeah.
I posted it on. That was really interesting. It was like
I watched that.
there was was it the comet? The comet opened up some time-space dimensional portal, and these other entities.
It's fine. You can keep going. There we go.
So then they came in and
Uh-oh. I think
might be better
within
without
that story they mentioned
we can't actually hear you very well.
If she comes back, get her to kill the video.
Yeah, or I can see it won't let me view the video anymore.
Oh, damn, I'm really interested because I don't know nothing about this.
I know, I want to know. I actually could tell you a little bit because I watched the video she posted, but let's give her a second to maybe come back, and if not, I'll try to fill in what she was trying to say. But Johnny, do you have any to share with us?
No, sadly, I was looking for anything I could think of that was like pop culture references of the Tartarians, and The only thing I came up with was I remember that there was a mod on Morrowind where you could like make a race of Tartarians, but they were like bird creatures, so that doesn't tie in at all, other than by name. I'm basically useless, but I'm filling time until until the technical.
Here's one we can use. So one of the biggest things that we like to that's pushed in historical narrative right now is the history of the Mongols, Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, all of that, and how they kind of took over China. We have Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, amazing podcast. You've never
It is. It's so good.
And so yeah, he has this series about it's called Wrath of the Khans, which is a fun play on words, but from Star Trek. And he gives this whole history of the Genghis Khan and how he takes over China and Russia and even attacks into Europe and all this fun stuff. But what if all of that is just an invented history to cover up? Because Mongolia is right where Tartaria is supposed to be. When you look at things like the Perry-Reese map and Google Tartaria map and you'll see it. Maybe you can bring one up, Lindsay. Google map of Tartaria, and that's right where Mongolia is. It covers this enormous swath of land that's 2 times the size of the United States. It's just enormous. And maybe the entire Mongolia or Mongols narrative was created to completely mask this the Tartarian Empire and everything that they did. Maybe at that time period they were fighting back against all this whatever global cataclysm that happened and trying to save some remnant of their empire. And this narrative of the Mongols was created to completely mask that, gloss it over.
Right.
It's interesting because
that's the problem I have with like most of history. I'm like, who even? I mean, who's to say what the fuck actually happened with any of it?
Yeah, I think some of the greatest revelation of truth that we ever got was from Napoleon Bonaparte. History is written by the victors.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would love to like write some new shit. I'm working on a Bible right now, so I'm gonna wipe everybody's mind. I have my own new religion that I'm setting up. It's gonna be, you can be a high bishop.
Take over the world.
It's gonna be a weird fucking world.
Dude, I'm down, buddy. I've seen your art and your music. That's gonna be the new healing music. I'm in.
Yes.
I think we have a chance to get Chris-Anne's take on the He-Man thing again. You want to give it a try again, Chris-Anne?
Well, what you were
Oh no, we can't even hear you now.
I think she hasn't muted. I saw her the little mute thing.
Oh, are you muted?
Is that better?
No, now you're muted.
Oh wow. Oh no.
What the heck?
Can't hear anything. All right. You keep trying to get your audio back, and then I'll try to tell what I understood of He-Man. Basically, He-Man's story is like almost exactly like Tartaria, this hidden history, and that there was a comet apparently that came and it like caught. I am not going to do this any justice. We need Chris-Anne back. I don't know. There's a lot of tie-ins. If you guys want to go watch the video that Chris-Anne dropped, or maybe if you search for He-Man Tartaria, but at least there's this cartoon, which is weird because it's like from the 80s when we were kids, right? So we're ripe for programming, but they're telling us maybe this actual truth hidden in the story of He-Man, this fucking weird ass show. It's a weird show. They're out like going between dimensions on other planets and shit. So I don't know.
One of the first things that I thought of was, the name, even the name of the world that He-Man was on, it kind of reminds me of Tartaria. It was called Eternia.
Yeah.
So I had to go look that up. It's been so long. I had all kinds of He-Man toys, when I was growing up. Man.
Yeah, I had like all the toys, but I don't remember shit about it. Like when I see like it has nothing to do with what we're talking.
There's some secret here, Johnny. Because
Well,
we were talking about He-Man before this.
He's all like I didn't remember. I guess he did pull out his sword to like have the power of Grayskull, but like before that, he was all just like a nice gentleman dressed all dapperly with like his freaking bowl cut, and then
he had the pet tiger, and then when he turned into He-Man, the tiger became what he rode.
So before he became He-Man and kicked ass, was he just like going to banquets all the time or something? He was totally an old banquet dress. Like, was it like Superman? Like he just changed for like when Skeletor came through. He's like, oh, well, like I'm gonna finish this sandwich and get the power of Grayskull and kick
So
some
I
ass.
have-
to go watch it again.
I have superpowers right now, and now I don't.
There you go.
So
I
easy.
think I wear mine.
You don't want to show us the power, Johnny. I get it.
Yeah, my eyes
In
glow.
fact, I'm not going to give you power.
Chrisanne, can we hear you? Can we hear Chrisanne yet?
Can you
Say
hear
something,
me?
Chrisanne.
I guess not.
Chrisanne, try turning off your
No.
video.
I guess not. Yeah, try turning off your video and then talk.
Okay.
So
While Chrisanne sees if we can hear her or not. Oh wait, can we hear you now?
Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello.
Nope.
Testing
Maybe
one,
Get her to
two.
drop off the call completely.
Yeah, you could leave and come back in and
Testing
see if
one,
that
two.
works. Sometimes that works.
All right, let me
Makes
try
me so
that.
sad because I'm so excited to hear.
I know.
Exactly.
Man. All right. Well, let's move on to flat Earth. So, how would flat Earth tie in with MudFlood and Tartaria?
Well,
The only way I could think of is if the flat Earth theory is correct, obviously there would be some sort of there had to be a higher power regardless. And I'm not saying there isn't if the Earth is round, but it was almost like a petri dish theory in my estimation. Like God's just like fucking with us like on this disc or whatever. So it would be a hell of a lot easier to just be like, oh, I don't like what they're doing, like MudFlood, bitch, and then start over. That's how I would be if I was a god. I would definitely curse him out.
I'd have to say that everyone could hear Chrisanne but us. Chrisanne, try talking again.
Hello?
And now we can hear Chrisanne. I don't know what the fuck is going on, but Chrisanne, will you please tell us about He-Man?
Can you hear you, Gary?
I can hear you fine now. I have no idea.
Try turning your video
Oh,
off.
you can.
Yeah. And
Turn
apparently
your video
everyone listening could hear you except us. So whatever. And now I can't hear her again.
off. See, I think the video is because she's on her cell phone. I think it's causing.
Okay. Turn video off.
Oh, I heard her. She was there. Okay, now you're
Hello?
muted. Yeah,
Yes.
there. Oh no, no.
Unmute and yeah, now talk. No.
Is everyone? Yes,
So
I heard you.
you can.
Cool.
Yep.
Hello?
Yeah, keep going.
I'm not showing up on there though.
It's okay.
It's okay. We can hear you.
Okay. I was just going to share about like the She-Ra aspect because that one was more like the Mongols and Genghis Khan. That like she's from Etheria and she dealt with her own aspect of another part of the story. But it's just so weird how they had two parts of the same, and he's like Adam, and he's like the earthly male figure, and she's from Etheria. I don't know. It was just really interesting. But then they had the mud, and they kind of had this whole weird environment of a previous civilization with, this castle Grayskull that was there for the beginning of time. Like this was the original. And who knows how many generations went by. I mean, could that skull have even been a mud fossil? Why is it?
Yeah.
Oh
It's
wow.
just odd. But it's sort of a combination of like all of the different stories, I don't know.
So what
I
was
just
it
found
with
really
the
fascinating.
what do you mean they both had the mud?
Well, when they fell off of the castle into mud. So, but they made comments about mud. Why always mud? And why
Yeah.
was the terrain always so muddy? So it was a little, it was interesting.
And then what about what was it with the comet? I couldn't remember either.
The comets were like this, not even like a astronomical thing. Some wizard created these comets, and they had these dual personalities or something. I don't know. They went evil on everyone.
Okay,
So
yeah.
then Evil Lyn was allowed to harness the power and use it for evil. And then they went to this guy and they put all their love in this fragment of the comet, and they were able to reverse this negative influence that it had.
It's so similar to my novel Sign Group of Aeons that it's like I'm wondering if I just like got part of that from my childhood, put it in my book.
Well, it may be the type of thing that happened with H.P. Lovecraft and J.R.R. Tolkien and his contemporaries, the Lindsay. They all told these same types of stories that they were channeling this, and it came out in their writing.
That book, I tell people that, like, I didn't write that book. That book came to me, and I just wrote what it wanted. Like, I don't write novels.
My favorite thing for that is, in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when after they see the aliens, everyone is compelled to build this big, sculpture of Devil's Tower.
Yeah.
It's just this thing that they have to do. They're compelled to do it.
Which I always do with mashed potatoes. Always. Every time. I can't help myself.
And that little sound programming thing, that's interesting.
Oh, that's huge too. Yeah, get into semantics. I feel like that's an entirely different episode.
Well, that makes me feel like if there's these entities in the etheric world or whatever that are using gray men to influence our plane of existence and cover up this type of stuff and like lead us down a deceptive path, that maybe there's equally as good entities in that dimension that are trying to give us these whatever channeled or inspired like ideas to remind us of what is true or what we're capable of or something. Just a random tangent.
Well, no, that totally makes sense, especially considering, think of what we said about Tartaria already. If they use this sort of electromagnetic energy to, power their civilization, that sort of energy still exists. What did the Germans called it? Vril. We had George Lucas talk about it in Star Wars. He called it the Force.
Right.
And it's that idea permeates our society. It's telekinesis, telepathy, cymatics. It's in everything, and we hear about it all the time, and it's always considered woo-woo or fiction or whatever. And I'm just going to use this. We hear about the CIA did it with remote viewing and things like that, and I'm just going to say people might think I'm weird, but I've remote viewed. It's.
Claude and I and some other people we won't name in case they don't want to be named have done remote viewing experiments and had very interesting results.
I do it all the time. I go to Claude's house and remote view, make sure he's up to good, make sure
he usually catches me up to no good, and I feel this in the back of my head.
Yikes.
Exactly. There definitely is some sort of like overall connection between everyone and everything. I do believe that because I'm not smart enough to know half the shit that I know. There's like you just pick up on stuff, or you'll be writing something and your buddy will like bring up the same shit the next day and you've never talked about that ever before, and it's like, we just pick up on a mental waves or whatever, which the only way I think that ties into all of this is if the Tartarian technology along with like the pyramids and all these structures were actually built to transmit energy or to like amplify that natural like cognition that we all share, that I think we share. I don't know. It would be like a good reason for some dicks that didn't want us all to be super powerful and enlightened to just shut that all down.
That's one of the theories.
Yes.
That's definitely one of the theories. Like Lindsay, you were talking about all of these ancient structures that were here. They kept them. They didn't tear them down. A lot of them they tore down, but the major power centers they kept because whoever they are, they're still using that energy, and people are still affected by that. And I want to draw that to we're affected by that, so they're trying to counteract that process. Keep people from waking up, so they fluoridate our water. They put chemicals in the sky. They give us genetically modified food, et cetera, and in order to keep us from being affected by that, the force or the virile energy or, whatever it is. And because we have a greater capacity to be able to utilize it if we know it's there. So they don't want us doing it. They don't want us realizing it's there. But I think it's probably, entropy is a thing, and whatever the opposite of entropy is, I'm losing my words. Extropy.
It is.
That's also a thing. You've got everything's ever expanding, and we're gonna wake up one way or the other. It's just a matter of time, and I think they probably realize that. So it's a
So
time.
they're
Can you
gonna
imagine living?
mudflood us.
Sorry, go ahead, Johnny.
No, I said we are waking it and they're realizing it, and that's why they're gonna just mudflood us soon. That's why we're
Probably.
getting everything into cryptocurrency and everything is getting digitized, so that information can just be wiped right out.
So
Yes.
it's a timed game, right? It's they're bringing about things like AI, and they want stuff like that to enter the global consciousness because that's the next step for humanity. It's all got to be digital. But that's as materialist as it gets. And if we think about what we're talking about with Tartaria, this was an evolved, enlightened civilization that was about as etheric as you can get. That's about as anti-artificial intelligence as possible. So
Yeah.
it's
Well, this also came up on the interview with Crow the other day too, that those types of technologies are leading us even more to believe less in ourselves and our own abilities. And we still do have the ability to, I mean, we've all done it at some point, like been psychic in some way, or had like a dream that seemed to foretell the future, had deja vu, or like, you think of someone and then they call. That doesn't happen to me as much anymore because no one calls anyone. But like, those types of experiences, we all know that we actually have abilities that are outside of what we're supposed to have.
Yeah.
But imagine like how much better that would be if we could know it and intentionally use it, and we had all of these like structures around the world that were meant to amplify that.
Right.
Like fuck the internet, and then that's hard to destroy, right? Like Johnny's saying, you can just right now you could easily wipe out our civilization with some EMPs.
It makes me wonder about 5G, if all those 5G towers that are so close together are meant to try to encapsulate that type of, maybe we should start looking and seeing if those 5G towers are so close together next to energetic areas or, or these types of structures where they're trying to encapsulate that energy into one little area so that it doesn't spread to people like us, so that we don't wake up.
I would bet you're probably right.
All
right, so like we're talking about Tartaria and the MudFlood history. How is it differentiated from stories like Atlantis, Lemuria, or Mu? We kind of mentioned it before, but like what would make it different? Or is it different? Are those just different words for the same thing?
I kind of think it's similar, just the way different cultures tell the same story in different ways. I think it could be like the exact same thing as far as Atlantis disappearing. Maybe it was a super mud flood and just, but no, it's the same. To me, I think it's kind of the same thing, the same principle of like this advanced civilization just disappearing, no trace, but like word of mouth, like, hey, have you heard of like Atlantis? And everyone's like, shut up, Plato, you're weird. Like, no, like seriously, there's this place. I don't know. It's very strange, and I still do think it's really weird that Tartaria just like popped into everybody's consciousness in the last like 6 to 8 months. Like, what is that like?
Yeah,
so weird.
it is. It's bizarre.
So then the main thing that would differentiate it would be that we normally think of Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu as like really, 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 really long ago, and we've been toiling through this type of civilization for thousands of years since then. Whereas MudFlood is like, yeah, that's all true, except it was much, much more recent than we think.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah.
Do you want to go down one more rabbit hole? I promise it'll be the last one.
Oh,
Wait.
God.
Only if it relates directly to the question, and
It
if
does.
not, okay, then yes, of course.
So I'm writing a book. Oh no.
No, I'm sorry, my brain just goes off these things. Think about all the slavery story in the Bible when they talk about the Israelites building the pyramids and all this fun stuff, and then they escape, and we went over that earlier. And then consider all of these different types of civilizations and relate that to where we're at today. If someone were to try to take over the civilizations on the earth the way they are today, the world is all of these, disparate countries. You got France, England, the United States, China, Russia. Why would Tartaria, which maybe that's what the earth was called at the time, be any different? It may have had all these different countries, and maybe they enslaved human beings, and that's why we have such a weird aversion to reptiles now. Everybody hates snakes. Most people hate snakes. And then the way to escape from that would be to destroy the reptiles. And the way that we would have to do that would be to destroy their power centers. So we destroy their power centers in different areas on the Earth, and what that causes is a polar shift. And when that polar shift happens, the flood happens, and it buries a bunch of shit under the ground, and then we can slowly start assimilating the rest of the Earth with the human population, which used to be slaves.
Ooh, just a mass mega conspiracy tied together.
I was
Wraps
pretty
everything
well.
up.
I dug it. Actually, I was hoping to trash talk it, but
You can't. Chris Ann, what do you want to add?
Claude's just in there. It all thinking some really crazy, weird stuff about what if full circle. What if we were them and we're sort of our original space? I don't know. This is a little bit out there, but because they seem so modern, what do you think these people with this just like, you know,
I
the
can't hear.
Tartaria, it's
I don't know if anyone else could hear any of that, but I couldn't, so I don't know what to say. But like as before, maybe everybody listening heard you and we just can't. I don't know what is happening. But anyway.
here, I'll go on this.
Yeah, so I don't know what else to say about Atlantis, Lemuria, or Mu. So I'm going to go on to whether or not mud fossils tie in with the theory of mud flood. We kind of touched on it earlier, and I liked the He-Man tie-in to that.
yeah,
Do we
that's
have anything else that we want to add to mud fossils and mud floods possibly being connected?
Well, if you buy into the, like, I don't know if you've ever seen that guy's channel, the Mud Fossil University. He's it's really interesting, and I kind of take it like Hollow Earth, Flat Earth, all that. I'm like, well, even if it's bullshit, it's really cool science fiction. But he'll go into like mountain ranges being like dragons that are like miles long that got like mud flooded to death or whatever, however they died. It's just kind of weird though for me to wrap my head around that idea. Like I love the idea of giants and whatnot, but I'm like mountain range size animals. That's really weird. Then we're dealing with like a plane or like a simulation Earth or something, because I can't imagine. I don't think dragons could live on a ball Earth. I think that's just crazy. I can wrap my head around everything but that.
So it'd have to be flat, hollow Earth with Claude talking about like how those fields maybe made things like kind of be able to expand more, grow more, or whatever, and then you can buy it.
Then I'm on board. Shit, then I'm starting a religion.
That will tie into your religion, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so that when you mentioned the dragons, like he's showing I think there was one in the desert, right, where he's showing like there's this dragon in the desert of Africa, in the Sahara Desert, and it's like fucking huge. Like it's way bigger than you would think a dragon could ever be. And it's cool. Like you go check it out and see what you think about it. But that could tie into when we're talking about the Tartarian flag having a dragon on it, and maybe I don't know, maybe they're similar.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, every time I watch the mud fossil guy, I'm like, dude, this is really cool. But like, I also saw a turtle in a cloud once, and I'm pretty sure that was a cloud and not like a fucking turtle. But I'm pretty imaginative, so it is fun to watch that guy. Because some of the stuff he shows is like pretty interesting. Like, I don't know if it's him that gets into it, but because I've always liked the giant tree, like the petrified giant trees, like Devil's Tower, like actually a tree stump and whatnot. So that's pretty interesting. But he'll get into like how that's actually like an Achilles heel, and I'm like, you're telling me that like Devil's Tower is an Achilles heel? Like I can't wrap my head around that. But Gulliver's Travels, so Gulliver's Travels. It always goes back to that because I always wanted that to happen to me.
The Lilliputian sounds a lot like Lemurian, so
there you go.
I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention the Smithsonian as far as all this goes. because one of the big conspiracy theories about the Smithsonian is about the things that they
Cover up.
should cover up in the United States specifically, regarding things like the Grand Canyon. Apparently, there have been a whole ton of archaeological finds in the Grand Canyon that the Smithsonian went and took and then squashed. There were, oh gosh, I can't remember the magazine. I think it might have been Popular Mechanics or Popular Science at the time. Popular Mechanics, probably. It was early 1900s. They did some kind of write-up about things that were found in the Grand Canyon, and then that issue of Popular Mechanics went away. And basically anything, people aren't allowed to go to certain areas of the Grand Canyon now.
Right.
They're hiding the Egyptian correlation.
Right, which could ultimately be Tartarian.
True.
As far as we know, right? So if we found Egyptian or Roman or hell, even Viking stuff in the United States, that would completely disrupt their historical narrative of what's going on. So we have an institution in the United States called the Smithsonian that is packed with members, billionaires. You go look at their members list. It's ridiculous.
And their headquarters is a castle.
Yes,
it's probably a Tartarian castle.
It's crazy. They're what do they call it? The Explorers Club is full of just the most crazy people. I think Aleister Crowley was a member. Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah. Tons of people are members of this club, and all they do is search the globe for random stuff. They climb random mountains. What are they looking for?
They fucking hide it from us. Yeah.
So maybe that's the entire point of the Smithsonian.
Just a random aside, Brett pointed out that you said Smithsonian Institute, and that's not its name. Mandela effect. It's the Smithsonian Institution.
Yep, it is the institution.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah, wow. That's a Mandela thing.
Totally Mandela.
Yeah, I actually
totally grow up, Claude.
I found a book in an old thrift store sort of place, and I looked at the and it was a Smithsonian Institution, and I looked at the date of publish, and it was 1981. So at least since then, we've been Mandelaed or something.
Oh, wow. Thanks,
all right.
That's awesome.
Classic Mandela.
Classic Mandela. So we're moving on now to the final question. So you guys want to add anything before we get to the final question on MudFlood that we haven't covered yet?
No.
There have been stories of giants in modern days that might relate to MudFlood completely. One of the big ones is when our United States Marines were in Afghanistan. Apparently, they ran into a giant red-haired, giant with 6 fingers and 6 toes, and shot him up in a cave. You guys can find the story on Google. Just Google Marines and giant, and there's firsthand accounts of them lifting this gigantic thing off with a Chinook helicopter and taking it back to base, and it disappeared in some giant cave. And one of the things is that these the Tartarians or Lemurians or Aryans, they may have all been the same people, were giants, and which would totally make sense with the kind of what we were talking about earlier with the dinosaurs and all that fun stuff, if that's even a thing. And if in these older parts of the world, consider where we're having wars right now, where all the wars are taking place. We know that the Rothschilds are, looking for artifacts over there. The Rothschilds have their own, named family foundation over there looking for artifacts. We know that they think that their bloodline is related to some, ancient Anunnaki or whatever bloodline. Maybe those are the same people. I think it all kind of relates together. And the fact that we have, you can Google giant skeletons and find, pictures of, early 1900s scientists standing next to these giant skeletons. And then even later on into the 60s, there's pictures of guys standing next to these giant skeletons or these giant bodies that they, killed or dug up. And I think it all kind of relates together. And it creates this narrative of, they don't want us to know this, and they squash everything having to do with it, and yet they're looking for everything having to do with it. Why is that? They're trying to bury it.
trying to bury it, and probably also trying to keep whatever technologies for themselves, because
Yeah,
then they have
for
the
sure.
power.
Yep. That was
All
what
right.
they talked about for Bush entering the war. Was he was looking for some Stargate that belonged to this
Right. Yeah, I remember.
ancient civilization. Yeah.
I remember hearing that. I was like, oh man, Bush like saw Stargate. I'm gonna
Dude,
find that thing. I'm gonna find it.
There's just so much that connects to this. It's crazy. Every time I
One of-
talk about something, it brings something else up, and I'm like, holy crap.
one of my favorite Freeman Fly theories is the Stargate theory that he has. So if you guys should check it out, it's pretty pretty fucking wild, actually.
It might connect directly to this. That's awesome.
I wish Chrisanne could talk, but I'm going to talk for her. She just commented in the chat, and she said she was thinking, is Tartaria us at the beginning, and are we at the end, the snake eating its tail?
Oh,
Ooh.
shit.
Jesus.
But I mean, there's hope in that, right? Because that would mean we're going to start another golden age soon when we get out of this low consciousness time period that we're in right now.
We have to. It has to happen. Just because so many of my friends and like everybody in the group and everybody that's on this path, like everybody's so enlightened. Well, as far as like nobody's like gurus or anything, but everybody like knows how people should be treated and just kind of knows that like all the bullshit they try to sell us is pointless and it's not really fulfilling to like. I mean, it'd be cool to have a Ferrari just to like, because I've always wanted to drive one off a cliff because of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but but like really, I mean, a lot of the people that I know now that I hang out with and talking to everybody in group and stuff, it just seems like there is a section of people that just don't buy the bullshit anymore. They're just not. They're not falling for the materialism and all the like lower fourth dimensional shit that they're trying to push on us. So it's very strange because on one hand I can like watch. Well, I don't watch MTV, but I imagine if I threw on MTV, I'd be like, "What the fuck? Like, what humans are these? Like, these people like don't really exist, do they?" And then on the other hand, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people that are kind of immune to all the bullshit they're trying to like drag us down with.
For sure.
I
wanted to be on a soapbox like Claude. I just really.
It works, but it's awesome.
Speaking of Ferraris, be the Ferrari, as Jimmy McGee would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Be the Ferrari.
And Chrisanne also wants to add that Tartaria seems so modern in comparison to our ideas of Atlantis. It's true. It's that's the main difference between the theory of Tartaria and Atlantis and Mu is how much more modern Tartaria would be only, like we said, a few generations ago, maybe within the last 200 years.
Right.
Wow, the sound quality just improved.
With all the with that the type of architecture that we see, that we say that's prescribed to Tartaria now, all these buildings and stuff like that. I want to try. I feel like you can tie that back to what Crow was saying the other day about the different types of buildings. He was talking about, was it the angles of sorrow and the angles of joy? If you look at the ancient architecture, it really does fit that. You know, we all live in these.
There's less like boxed, more domes, more triangles, more what am I trying to say? The geometry, the sacred geometry.
Yeah,
cymatics. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the final words of wisdom. What do you guys want to say to the people at home?
Go ahead, John.
People at home, stay inside. It's fucking dangerous outside. But get out and get some sunlight when you need it. No, I just wanted to say that I love everybody in the group and everything. It's very interesting to meet other like-minded people. I'm always learning from everybody, which is a lot of fun because I feel bad. I'm never teaching. I'm always just taking. I'm just a taker. I just learn from everybody else. And Claude finds that hilarious. But yeah, I want to say like what the bigwig people always say, since this is my 5 minutes of fame. Don't believe anything that I say. Research it for yourself.
Yeah.
And they're gaying up the frogs. They're gaying up the frogs.
That's awesome,
True.
buddy.
He's right.
Before I go on my little tirade, I want to say that Johnny and I are actually the synchronicity of the group. We share the exact same birthday. He's 2 years older than me, but we share the exact same birthday. But we're a little different in that, I don't know, I just have this need to try and teach, I guess. I don't know. But I can only, at the same time, I feel like you, Johnny. It's like I have to constantly absorb things. I just have this need to learn things constantly. And then every time I learn something, I'm like, oh, I got to spit it right back out to the conscious.
No, absolutely.
Everybody else does it too.
I think the difference is a lot of people. I'm horrible at writing. I'm much better an orator than like a writer. So I'll start to try to write some stuff. And I'm like, this doesn't even make sense at all. I'm just making up verbs and I'm just in, like out of thin air. And so I'm like, I'll just read what someone else wrote.
But I think that's a Leo thing though, man, because we're expressing ourselves, and you do it through art. You know, you're expressing these things through these amazing pieces of art that just, you know, I look at something that you've drawn and I look at it for 5 minutes and I'm like, holy crap, you know, there's so much there. And it's the same thing. You're expressing these ideas emotionally. You're creating this emotional response from the people that are looking at your art, because it's not, you know, it's not.
You're not normal, Johnny. You're not normal at all.
But it's fucking awesome, dude.
That is the expression. No, it's true. It's an expressive side. And I've also found like a few tabs of acid before painting really helps.
If you guys haven't seen Johnny's art, you need to check it out. And it's
nice.
I just want to say, when you're looking at history or politics or general news narratives, paradigms, question everything. Even if it's something that you feel like you saw happen, odds are there's more to the story. Keep looking at it, because you'll find things like Tartaria. And, you know, I've delved into freaking conspiracy stuff now for a long time, and I never even really heard of Tartaria. I'd heard of the Tartars, but never anything had to do with this stuff. And it's just goes to show that when you think you found the end of the rabbit hole, there's one more, and it goes a level deeper.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to add to that with my final words of wisdom and saying that you literally have to question everything, including especially your ideas of like what could possibly be true. Because before I kind of thought of this, if you asked me, could our entire history have been covered up as early as, 100 years ago, maybe 200 years ago, I'd say hell no. But now that I've like looked at some of the evidence, I'm like, well, at least I'm open to questioning it now. And I say question everything, but I obviously don't always. I think we don't always know what we won't question until we come up against it. So I like this as an exercise, and it reminds me that we should all be questioning literally everything all the time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, even if you don't end up agreeing that MudFlood is a thing and that that's the truth, like at least you thought about it and considered the possibility. And then I'm going to share Chris-Anne's final words of wisdom again. I don't know if they actually are, but she added another little awesome idea here. So she said, in cosmology, they say we may expand and then contract as a universe. So maybe we all started small, became giants, and now we're small again. Yeah.
That's
and it
awesome.
connects with the Yuga cycles and everything. So that's pretty rad too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry we had some tech issue people who couldn't participate as much as we wanted. Chris-Anne, you were fucking awesome, even though you couldn't be here the whole time and we couldn't hear you sometimes and whatever the fuck was happening. But anyway, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom according to Claude Furry. Claude, thank you for being here.
Absolutely, homie. You got it.
And to Johnny, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And Chris-Anne, even though she's not in this episode anymore, thank you for being here, Chris-Anne. So it is relatively impossible for us to even imagine that our government might lie about anything, even when we are presented with evidence that they have carried out false flags like the Gulf of Tonkin incident or Operation Gladio. So it's even more difficult for us to question something so unthinkably huge, like covering up an entire worldwide civilization of peaceful abundance that covered the globe for millennia and ended only a few short decades ago. Then again, we see pyramids the world over that were covered with rocks and pebbles like Mount Nimrut, or temples that were hidden like Göbekli Tepe. And we also see similar types of architecture indicating a worldwide culture. We see similar types of technology hinted at when we see the same materials and shapes utilized in so many cases. And we see evidence of impossible seeming technology when we behold multi-ton stonework carved to within a hair's breadth of perfection. Eventually, it seemed clear that there was definitely a worldwide culture that has been either hidden or ignored. And when you take into account the hesitance people have to question the official narrative of literally anything combined with some super shady techniques of manipulative concealment, it becomes plausible that something bigger than many of us can imagine could have been lost to this mass mind. What we do know is this: technology once existed that can accomplish what we are told is impossible. I, for one, hope to live to see the day that we reclaim that technology as our birthright. Until then, I hope nothing more than for you all to travel well, to aim for balance, and to always look inside first.